Hello friends, stay tuned to the end of this video for a short but special segment on Give Kids the World Village. Okay, so I have a trivia question for you. What are the 4 most visited cities by tourists in the United States? According to Condé Nast Traveler, in 2024, the 4 most visited cities in America in order of number of visitors were: Number 1, New York City. Number 2, Miami. Number 3, Los Angeles. And coming in at number 4, Orlando, with over 75.3 million visitors in 2024 alone, of which 68.84 million were domestic travelers and 6.49 million were international visitors. So why do so many people visit Central Florida and Orlando each year? Well, come along with us on our journey to find out what makes Orlando so special. We will first get an overview of Orlando as it exists today, and then dive into the city's history to see how it rose to become such a world-class travel destination. Orlando is the county seat of Orange County, Florida. It is the 4th most populous city in the state, but the greater Orlando metro area has over 2.94 million residents, making it the 20th largest in the United States. It is also Florida's largest inland city. Some nicknames for Orlando include Magic City, O-Town, the City Beautiful, and the theme park capital of the world. Some famous individuals from the Orlando area include actor Wesley Snipes, Backstreet Boys' Howie Duro, singer and frontman of Creed, Scott Stapp, painter and host of The Joy of Painting, Bob Ross, American rapper Hot Boy, NFL players Warren Sapp and Chris Johnson, otherwise known as CJ2K, and former MLB player, general manager, and pioneer of the Moneyball strategy of evaluating baseball players, Billy Beane. According to 2024 U.S. Census data population estimates, the city of Orlando had a population of 334,854. The Orlando-Kissimmee-Sanford metro area had a population of 2,940,513. And the Orlando-Lakeland-Deltona combined statistical area had a population of 4,687,600. Orlando hosts the largest population of Puerto Ricans in Florida, and sizable populations of Cubans, Dominicans, and Colombians. Large Haitian, Jamaican, Bahamian, and other Caribbean populations exist in the city as well. And Orlando has a large and growing Brazilian population, and is a popular choice as a travel destination for Brazilians. A Brazilian banking company, Inter & Co., even secured the naming rights of Orlando City SC's stadium. Uniquely, due to Orlando being such a large international tourist destination, there are several foreign consulates located in the city representing the countries of Austria, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, the Czech Republic, France, and Germany. Orlando was once an agricultural hub dominated by the cattle, cotton, and citrus industries. Today, Orlando boasts a diversified economy and is a major player in the aerospace, research, simulation, technology, healthcare, and defense sectors. In 2024, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics named Orlando the #1 city in America for job growth that year. Of course, the primary driver of Orlando's economy is tourism. After all, you do not earn the nickname theme park capital of the world for nothing. So let's talk about Orlando's amusement parks and tourism first. Orlando hosts 7 of the top 10 most visited theme parks in North America, and 4 of the most visited water parks in the United States. The largest and most visited being Walt Disney World. Disney World includes 4 major theme parks: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom, and 2 water parks, Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach. Disney World further has 19 resorts, 4 golf courses, numerous conference centers, the ESPN Wild World of Sports and Competitive Sports Complex, and 3 shopping, dining, entertainment centers: Disney Springs, Disney Boardwalk, and Flamingo Crossings. The second largest theme park in Orlando, and the third most visited in North America, is Universal Orlando, consisting of 3 major theme parks: Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure, and Epic Universe, and 1 water park, Volcano Bay. Universal also has 11 resort hotels and the Universal City Walk Entertainment District. The third largest park in the area, and 10th most visited in North America, is SeaWorld Orlando, a marine animal theme park with 8 roller coasters, which is more roller coasters than any other theme park in Orlando. SeaWorld also hosts numerous animal shows and exhibits. Attached to SeaWorld Orlando is the Aquatica Water Park and Discovery Cove, where visitors can swim with dolphins, snorkel with fish and rays, or float in a lazy river in a tropical atmosphere. Other popular theme parks in the greater Orlando area include Legoland Florida in nearby Winter Haven. It is the second largest Legoland in the world and has more than 50 rides, shows, and attractions, 4 roller coasters, 6 water rides, and 3 hotels. Also on the property is a Peppa Pig theme park, a sea life aquarium, and the Legoland water park. Fun Spot America in Orlando has 4 different go-kart tracks, multiple arcades, 3 roller coasters, and 6 thrill rides. Gatorland in South Orlando opened in 1949 and is a theme park and wildlife preserve showcasing alligators and other swamp-dwelling animals. Gatorland boasts alligator wrestling, zip lines, off-roading tours, a miniature railroad, and petting zoo. And lastly, the Icon Park Entertainment Complex, featuring the 400-foot-tall Orlando Eye, also has the Sea Life Orlando Aquarium, Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, thrill rides, shopping, and restaurants. But Orlando also benefits greatly by being in close proximity to other Central Florida tourist destinations. Less than an hour's drive away from Orlando are the Kennedy Space Center, Port Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, and Daytona Beach. The Kennedy Space Center is the launch pad for NASA's space exploration missions. NASA offers tours of its facilities and showcases the history and future of spaceflight. Additionally, some visitors travel to the area to watch rocket launches in person. Port Canaveral is one of the busiest cruise ship terminals in the entire world, and thousands of passengers begin and end their cruise journey from this port each year. Cocoa Beach is known as the surfing capital of the East Coast and is the headquarters of Ron Jon Surf Shop and birthplace of American surfing legend Kelly Slater. And Daytona Beach is a popular spring break destination, the headquarters of NASCAR, and home of the Daytona International Speedway. Many of the tourists visiting the Space Coast, Port Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, or Daytona choose to fly into Orlando to begin their journey because it is the largest airport in the area. Really, you could teach a college course on Central Florida attractions and still never come close to covering everything. Some smaller attractions offered in the Orlando area include kayaking and snorkeling in one of the numerous local freshwater springs, airboat tours of local lakes and swamps, swimming, bouncing, and climbing at Nona Adventure Park, the Orlando Science Center, the Central Florida Zoo and Botanical Gardens, the Bach Tower Gardens, the Harry P. Liu Gardens, the Crayola Experience, Island H2O Water Park, Cocoa Key Water Resort, Old Town in Kissimmee, the Orlando Museum of Art, and the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. It's no wonder that so many people choose Orlando and Central Florida as their vacation destination. There are literally endless entertainment options in the area, and more are added each year. And because of Orlando's busy airport, numerous hotels and resorts, and countless attractions, Orlando is a popular convention center destination with over 150 annual trade shows. The Orange County Convention Center is the second largest convention center in the United States after only McCormick Place in Chicago, and has over 7 million square feet of space. But Orlando's economy is built on far more than tourism. As a hub of industry and high tech, Orlando is home to the 7th largest research park in the country, the Central Florida Research Park, which is over 1,000 acres and home to over 120 companies. Many large companies that focus in research and development, telecommunications, aerospace, and advanced manufacturing have a large presence in Orlando, including General Dynamics, Mitsubishi Power Systems, Siemens, AT&T, Boeing, Hewlett-Packard, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon. And Central Florida has a large military footprint. The U.S. modeling, simulation, and training, or MS&T industry, is also centered in Orlando, which is why Orlando has so many military installations and private companies and military-adjacent industries nearby. Orlando is also home to the procurement commands of the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Additionally, Orlando's proximity to the Florida Space Coast, with Patrick Space Force Base, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and the Kennedy Space Center, generates many jobs related to national defense, rocketry, and space exploration. Many of these employees live in the Orlando suburbs and commute each day to the Space Coast, which can be less than a 45-minute drive depending on what area of the city you live in. EA Orlando plays an important part in the city's economy as well. Formerly known as Tiburon Entertainment and founded in 1994, the company found a niche for itself by writing programs for larger gaming companies such as Electronic Arts. Tiburon helped produce enormously successful video games for Electronic Arts, including Madden Football and NCAA College Football. EA eventually bought Tiburon Entertainment in 1998, and EA Orlando still produces these sports-themed titles today. The headquarters of the American Automobile Association, perhaps more widely recognized as AAA, can be found in nearby Heathrow. AAA has a long history of providing roadside assistance, towing, insurance, tour guides and tour books, and member discounts. Lastly, Orlando has made its mark on the restaurant industry as well. The city serves as the headquarters of Red Lobster, with the very first Red Lobster being opened in nearby Lakeland in 1968. And the city also serves as the headquarters of Darden Restaurants, who own Cheddar's, Chewy's, Longhorn Steakhouse, Ruth's Chris, and Olive Garden, whose first restaurant was also in Orlando and opened its doors in 1982. Although the Orlando area is home to several state universities and colleges, and private universities and colleges, the University of Central Florida is the largest and most prominent institution of higher learning in the area. In fact, with nearly 70,000 students on campus in 2024, it is the second largest university by enrollment in the United States, only after Texas A&M. Founded as Florida Technological University in 1963, it held its first classes in 1968 and played a crucial role in educating students in the fields of technology, engineering, science, and math, who would go on to support the U.S. aerospace industries dotted along the Space Coast. As Florida Technological University began to offer classes beyond the scope of science and engineering classes, the school changed its name to the University of Central Florida, but the university still plays a crucial role in U.S. aerospace programs today. Orlando is home to two Major League sports teams. The NBA's Orlando Magic began play in 1989. The Magic currently play at the Kia Center and played in two NBA Finals series in 1995 and 2009. The MLS's Orlando City Soccer Club, also known as the Lions, began play in 2011 and currently play at Inter&Co Stadium. The Lions have yet to win an MLS Cup, but did win the 2022 U.S. Open Cup. Orlando is also home to Camping World Stadium. Opened in 1936 and formerly known as Orlando Stadium, this large football stadium hosts college football's annual Citrus Bowl and Pop-Tarts Bowl. And for the golf fans out there, the Bay Hill Club is also located in Orlando and hosts the annual Arnold Palmer Invitational, a PGA Tour tournament held each March. A unique, and to some locals, frustrating feature of the Orlando transportation system is that the city is served by only one interstate, Interstate 4, making it the largest metropolitan area in the United States served by a single interstate. Interstate 4 runs the width of the Florida Peninsula in a northeasterly direction from Tampa towards Daytona Beach, making this a popular route for those traveling between the Gulf Coast and Atlantic Ocean. To help alleviate traffic, the state of Florida has built numerous expressways in and around Orlando. The Orlando area is served by 3 airports, but by far the largest and most utilized is Orlando International Airport, Orlando International is the busiest airport in the state of Florida. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, in 2024, Orlando International Airport was the 8th busiest airport in the United States and 18th busiest in the entire world, with over 27 million enplanements. And a lesser known fact about Orlando, the city is, and always has been, a major rail town. The Orlando Amtrak station has been in continuous use since 1927 and is currently served by 2 lines. The Silver Meteor line offers service between Miami and New York City, and the Floridian line offers service from Miami to Chicago. Additionally, the Sunrail serves as the commuter rail system for Greater Orlando. Owned by the Florida Department of Transportation and beginning operations in 2014, Sunrail has 17 stations and has a track length of over 61 miles. Sunrail travels in a north-south direction between DeLand and Point Siena, running through the heart of downtown Orlando. And finally, Brightline is an inter-city rail route that runs between Orlando and Miami. It is the only privately owned and operated inter-city passenger railroad in the United States and runs from downtown Miami to the Orlando International Airport. Okay, so now that we have a pretty good overview of Orlando and Central Florida as it exists today, let's take a look at why the city was founded and look at the events that led to its tremendous growth. But a quick reminder before we continue. If you enjoy the videos we create on the Whitehall channel, please show your support by liking the video, leaving a comment, or subscribing to our channel. You can also turn the notification bell on so you are the first to know when a new video is published. We could not do this without you, and we thank you so much for your tremendous support. Okay, so now a little bit about Orlando's geography. Orlando is located in Central Florida, approximately 50 miles from the Atlantic coastline and 77 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. The terrain is flat and consists mainly of wetlands and swamps. The area is surrounded by numerous lakes, the largest of which is Lake Apopka. The geology of the area is mostly limestone, which creates numerous springs and sinkholes. Temperatures in Orlando typically range between 50 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 to 32 degrees Celsius year-round. Snow is extremely rare, but sometimes the temperature can drop below freezing. The city of Orlando's boundaries only cover approximately 110 square miles within Orange County and resemble a checkerboard pattern within the county. There are numerous unincorporated communities within Orange County that are not a part of Orlando, which is why Orlando as a city is only ranked 59th in population in the US, but the greater Orlando area is the 15th largest in the US with over 4.6 million people. Orlando's downtown core is centered around the picturesque Lake Eola with its fountain. Lake Eola is actually a sinkhole that filled with water from an aquifer located 200 feet below the surface. And the fountain in Lake Eola, that is reflected in the city's flag and that many consider to be the city's symbol, was constructed in 1957 to replace a previous fountain installed in 1912 and is today known as the Linton E. Allen Memorial Fountain. The fountain was refurbished in 2011 and water jets and lights for a nightly light show were added. The city's major sporting venues are located just west of Lake Eola on the west side of Interstate 4. 200 South Orange is the tallest building in the downtown core and stands at a height of 441 feet. Other more recently completed skyscrapers have not exceeded this 441-foot height limit because Orlando Executive Airport is less than 2 miles east of the downtown core. Southeast of the downtown core is Orlando International Airport and Lake Nona Medical City. Southwest of downtown is the main tourist strip, and most of the amusement parks and attractions, including Disney World, SeaWorld, and Universal Studios, are located here. To the northwest lies the gigantic Lake Apopka, the largest lake in the region. And to the east and northeast is the campus of the University of Central Florida. Okay, so now that we have the lay of the land, let's talk a bit about the history of Florida. Paleo Indians arrived in Florida around 14,000 years ago. When European explorers first arrived, Central Florida was inhabited by the Timucua, Mayaca, and Hororo Native American peoples. It is estimated that approximately 50,000 Timucua lived in Florida at the time of the first European explorations of the state. Florida was the first region of the contiguous United States to be explored and settled by Europeans. The earliest known European explorer of the area was Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon, who arrived on the peninsula on April 2, 1513, naming the area La Florida, meaning full of flowers or land of the flowers. The first permanent settlement in Florida was established along its North Atlantic coast at St. Augustine in 1565, creating the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the continental United States. France made claims to the west of Florida, and England made claims to the north of Florida. In an effort to help populate Florida, the Spanish government and King Charles II encouraged slaves from England's colonies to escape to Florida, where they would be granted their freedom in exchange for converting to Catholicism. English colonists and soldiers launched several raids into Florida in the 17th and 18th centuries in an effort to recapture these formerly enslaved persons. Needless to say, relations between England and Spain soured during this period, as each aimed to gain more and more control of the New World. As part of the Treaty of Paris in 1763, Spain gave control of Florida to Great Britain, in exchange for the British agreeing to leave Cuba at the end of the 7 Years' War. Also, as part of the treaty, Spain would be given control of Louisiana from France due to Spain's loss of Florida. However, Spain once again regained control of Florida after Britain's defeat in the American Revolutionary War and the subsequent Peace of Paris in 1783. At this point in time, Spain controlled all of the American West, the Florida Peninsula, and the entire Gulf Coast region of the United States. But Spain's second period of control of Florida, from 1783 to 1821, would be marked by a slow erosion of its sovereignty in the territory. Although Spain sent some officials and soldiers to the area, little to no new settlers arrived. At this point in time, Spain was more interested in its territorial possessions in the Caribbean and South America, and did little to control the borders of Florida or prevent American settlers from slowly moving in and wresting territory away. Encouraged by the doctrine of manifest destiny, American settlers began to challenge Spanish claims in the western part of the state and set up the Republic of West Florida in September of 1810. These claims were backed by President James Madison, who claimed that western Florida was part of the 1803 Louisiana Purchase from Napoleonic France. During and after the War of 1812, in which Spain sided with Britain against the United States, Americans claimed and took more Florida territory. And in the spring of 1812, a Republic of East Florida was set up by American insurgents, challenging Spain's rule. Tensions between Spain and the United States only continued to rise, as future American President Andrew Jackson led military campaigns into Florida, which would later become known as the First Seminole War. The Jackson raids were in response to alleged lawlessness on the Florida border with Georgia. Seminoles were accused of raiding American settlements in southern Georgia, and Georgia slave owners were angry that some of their slaves were seeking freedom in Florida and setting up small settlements there. After these American military incursions into Florida, Spain decided that Florida had become a burden. Spain did not want to risk further military actions against the United States, and Florida was not very profitable for Spain at this time. As part of the Adams-Onis Treaty, which took effect in 1821, Spain ceded Florida to the United States in exchange for $5 million in payments and the settlement of several boundary disputes Spain had with the United States. In 1822, the United States officially established the Florida Territory. But the taming and settlement of Florida would not be easy for the United States, and required numerous military actions and settlement treaties over the course of several decades. This began with the 1823 Treaty of Moultrie Creek, which moved Native Americans living in Florida's Panhandle to a large reservation in Central Florida, which includes modern-day Orlando. However, the United States passed the Indian Removal Act only a few years later in 1830, with the objective of moving all Native Americans to areas west of the Mississippi River. But many of the Florida Native Americans, unsurprisingly, did not wish to leave Florida and move out west. When American soldiers attempted to enforce the removal, Native Americans resisted, leading to the Second Seminole War. And this is how Orlando came to be. Due to the ongoing Seminole Wars, a series of forts were constructed across the state of Florida to provide protection for settlers and soldiers moving deeper into Florida's territory. One such fort, Fort Gatlin, was constructed in 1838 by the 4th U.S. Artillery and was located just 3 miles south of modern-day downtown Orlando. This small frontier fort was the seed that would eventually blossom into modern Orlando, as Fort Gatlin was the first American settlement in the Orlando area. In 1842, the Second Seminole War ended. That same year, the Armed Occupation Act was passed by Congress as an incentive to increase the population of Florida. The act granted 160 acres of free, unsettled Florida land to any U.S. citizen who pledged to clear the land, build a house on it, live on it for at least 5 consecutive years, and serve in the local militia. This act spurred significant population growth in Florida. In 1843, one of Orlando's earliest and most prominent settlers, Aaron Jernigan, arrived and settled near Lake Holden. Originally from Georgia and living for a period of time in Tallahassee, Jernigan was lured by the promises of the Armed Occupation Act. Jernigan chose to clear some land and build a cabin roughly 2 miles away from Fort Gatlin. In 1844, Jernigan moved his wife Mary, their children, several slaves, and over 700 head of cattle down from Tallahassee to his new homestead in Central Florida. Jernigan planted corn, cotton, rice, sugarcane, pumpkin, and melons on his new property, which would eventually encompass over 1,200 acres. When Florida became a state in 1845, Jernigan was elected Orange County's first representative to the state legislature, and he served as captain of the local militia. Due to local cattle rustling and an increase in attacks from Native Americans, Jernigan built a large stockade on the north shore of Lake Conway in 1849. Over 80 nearby settlers moved into the stockade for protection and banded together to defend it. This settlement eventually became known as Jernigan on local maps, and it continued to grow rapidly, eventually getting its own post office in 1850. However, by 1857, the post office was removed from Jernigan and opened under the name Orlando at a new location just a couple miles away in present-day downtown Orlando. Many speculate the renaming and moving of the Jernigan post office could be attributed to Aaron Jernigan and his militia falling out of favor with military officials and other authorities. Jernigan was relieved of his militia command in 1856, and in 1859 Jernigan and his sons were accused of serious crimes and other, quote, notorious acts. But why was this new settlement renamed Orlando? Well, your guess is as good as anyone else's. There is no confirmed or universally accepted reason for how this area of Central Florida received the name Orlando. However, there are several leading theories for how the area got its name. One theory goes that Judge, State Representative, and State Senator James Gamble Spear, who was instrumental in making Orlando the county seat of Orange County, put forth the name Orlando because Judge Spear was an enormous fan of William Shakespeare, and named the city after the character Orlando in Shakespeare's comedy As You Like It. A second theory is that Judge Spear named the settlement Orlando after a man that used to work for him. A third theory posits that a traveler named Mr. Orlando fell ill and died in the area on his way to Tampa, and locals who buried him would say, "There lies Orlando," and the name carried on. But the final and most widely accepted theory is that Orlando was named after either Orlando Reeves, a soldier who died fighting during the Seminole Wars, or Orlando Reese, a wealthy plantation owner in the area who had a sugar farm burned down during the Seminole Wars. The mystery remains unsolved to this day, and historians still have lively debates over how the area received its name. But names aside, once the new post office opened, the area around Orlando had grown considerably. Settlers began moving into the interior of Orange County, and these locals sought a more centrally located administrative center within the county. Accordingly, in 1857, voters chose an area of land near Lake Eola to be the new seat of the Orange County government. The desired land was purchased and plans were put forth for a courthouse surrounded by 4 streets which would create a courthouse square. Shortly after, a hotel was built to accommodate those who needed to travel far distances to do business in court. Although Orlando's population was very small at this time, the area was ripe for enormous growth. The surrounding land consisted mostly of large, untouched pine forests, and the land was very fertile. Wild turkeys and deer abounded. Grazing land for cattle was plentiful, and the dozens of freshwater lakes in the area provided fish for settlers and drinking water for the settlers and livestock. Prior to the American Civil War, Orlando was a cotton and cattle center. Cotton took well to Central Florida, and there was ample open land for grazing and acres of fresh water for large herds of cattle to enjoy. The area at this time consisted mostly of settlers living in log cabins on large acreages of farmland. In 1861, Florida became the 3rd state to secede from the Union. According to the 1860 census, Florida only had a free population of 78,679 and a slave population of 61,745, a total of only 140,000 people. 44% of Florida's population was enslaved, which was the 5th highest of all states in 1860. And Orlando, like most of the South, suffered tremendously during the Civil War. Crops of cotton and cattle were left unattended, and the Union naval blockade choked off imports that people relied upon that had previously been coming into the state. During the Reconstruction era, after the South had lost the war, soldiers returning home to Orlando found a cotton industry that was dead. Unable to function without slave labor, large fields of cotton had gone to seed and become unprofitable. These large cotton plantations were eventually replaced with cattle ranches, and Central Florida started to resemble the Wild West, with cattle stealing, lawlessness, and violence. Razorback hogs roamed the streets, and alligator wrestling was considered major entertainment by locals. Gunfights, brawls, and murders were commonplace. However, by the late 1870s, larger cattle herd owners from other parts of Florida moved into the Orlando area and began organizing the industry, which decreased much of the violence. But the period from approximately 1875 to 1895 is considered by many to be Orlando's golden era, and is when the area bounced back after being heavily decimated due to the Civil War. It was in the 1870s that Florida made its mark on the citrus industry. Many of the old, abandoned cotton fields were replanted with citrus varieties. These citrus fruits took well to the Central Florida climate and became very profitable. Magazines and billboards began luring Americans to Florida with its abundance of cheap land and desirable climate. Newcomers either supplied the labor for these new citrus groves or bought old, defunct farms outright to begin citrus growing operations themselves, turning Central Florida into the citrus hub of the United States. The settlement of Jernigan was formally incorporated into the town of Orlando in 1875, with William Jackson Brack serving as the first mayor. A year later, the Orange County Reporter was first published and was the predecessor of today's Orlando Sentinel. But prior to the arrival of railroads, the growth of Orlando was stymied by the fact that no rivers provided transportation to the area, and roads were very difficult to build on Central Florida's swampy terrain. However, this all changed in 1880 when the South Florida Railroad began operating, providing a connection between Tampa Bay and the port at nearby Sanford on the St. Johns River. From just 1880 to 1886, the city's population rose from approximately 200 people to 2,000 people. The railroad would increase tourism, bring more residents into Central Florida, and ship cattle and citrus fruits to larger markets. And Orlando began to modernize. In 1883, Orlando paved its first sidewalks and opened its first bank. That same year, the town also voted itself dry in order to avert the violence from the previously lawless cowboy years that were still fresh in everyone's mind. A great fire in January of 1884 nearly destroyed the entire town, as virtually all structures in the town were built out of wood and there was no local fire brigade yet formed. This great blaze started at around 4 a.m. at a grocery store and spread quickly, burning down blocks of businesses. Even the Orange County Reporter burned to the ground. But Orlando locals rallied in support of their beloved local newspaper by building it a new location, raising cash to defray the newspaper's losses, and gathering $300 worth of subscriptions to get the business going again. That very same year, Florida shipped a record 600,000 boxes of oranges to other markets. And in 1885, Orlando was incorporated as a city, and the city's first fire brigade was formed. Orlando was now becoming a major player in Florida, boasting over 50 businesses. The Orlando Street Railway began operating in 1886 and consisted of a mule-drawn streetcar that ran north-south along Orange Avenue between Lake Lucerne and Lake Ivanhoe. Only 3 years later, in 1889, the beautifully built Church Street Station was opened and began operating. This iconic building roughly marks the center of old downtown Orlando and has become an enduring symbol of the city. In 1892, the fourth official courthouse of Orange County was built, a stunning red brick Gothic Revival building with a bell tower. That same year, Lake Eola Park was officially established in downtown Orlando from land donated by wealthy Orlando resident Jacob Summerlin, whose donation of land to the city was contingent on the promise from the city that it would keep the park beautiful into perpetuity. Orlando's growth during this time was immense, and the city looked destined to become the undisputed epicenter of Central Florida's economy. However, nature had different plans. The Great Freeze of 1894 to 1895 brought Orlando's rapid growth to an immediate halt. Orlando reached an all-time low of 18 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 8 degrees Celsius, on December 28, 1894, and that low temperature record still stands today. The second freeze in February of 1895 was even more devastating because it actually killed the trees rather than just the fruit. Water pipes burst and orange blossoms died. Grapefruits, lemons, oranges, and limes froze on the trees. Following the freeze, Florida citrus production plummeted from shipping over 6 million boxes of citrus fruits annually to less than 100,000 boxes annually. Land values plummeted, and individual growers were forced to sell off their small citrus groves to a handful of larger so-called citrus barons, who subsequently shifted operations to regions in Florida's far south to try to avert another freeze. The Great Freeze caused many Orlando citrus growers to leave the area and search for work elsewhere, leading to a population loss in the city near the end of the 19th century. The years of 1895 to 1910 were relatively quiet for Orlando as the city tried to bounce back from the devastating Great Freeze. At the turn of the century, Orlando only reported a population of 2,481 for the 1900 U.S. Census, and would report a population of only 3,894 for the 1910 U.S. Census. However, large economic movements were happening behind the scenes that would make an immense impact on Orlando. Between the years 1885 and 1912, the Florida East Coast Railroad was constructed by Standard Oil co-founder Henry Flagler. Up to this period, Florida was relatively closed off to most of the American population because the state lacked sufficient transportation infrastructure, and the land itself was seen by investors as inhospitable swampland. However, Flagler saw Florida's potential after a stay in St. Augustine and decided a railroad needed to be built to get people to and from Florida. The railroad would eventually connect all of the Florida Atlantic coast from Key West to Jacksonville and connect the state of Florida to the rest of the United States. World War I had effectively cut off wealthy Americans from their favorite vacationing spots in Europe. But with the recent completion of the Flagler railroads, Florida became an ideal new vacationing spot with its warm climate and dreamy beaches. This increase in tourists, coupled with post-World War I American prosperity, created the Florida land boom. Tourists, land speculators, and buyers poured into the state. Enormous billboards were even displayed in Times Square in New York City promoting the wonders and allure of Florida. And Orlando benefited from this land boom immensely, as acres of the nearly worthless old citrus groves were bulldozed to build expensive new housing development projects around the downtown area. The city completed construction on the Imagempt Hotel and opened its first public library in 1923. In 1927, the city opened the Orlando Municipal Auditorium, now the Bob Carr Performing Arts Center, and in 1928, the Orlando Municipal Airport opened just a couple miles east of downtown. But the Florida land boom would end as quickly as it began. Land prices finally reached ridiculous numbers, and land speculators began having a difficult time finding buyers. This, coupled with 2 hurricanes, a railroad embargo, and the onset of the Great Depression, put the final nail in the coffin of the Florida land boom in the late 1920s. Florida would weather the Great Depression better than most states, and President Roosevelt's New Deal projects helped put thousands of Floridians back to work. Hundreds of these projects were located in the Orlando area, including the expansion and resurfacing of the city airport, and the construction and opening of Orlando Stadium in 1936, now known as Camping World Stadium. But the event that really lifted Orlando back on its feet was World War II. During the war, Orlando became known as Florida's air capital. The Orlando Municipal Airport, which had opened in 1928, was taken over by the United States Army Air Corps in 1940 to be used as a training facility, and the Army renamed it Orlando Army Air Base. Orlando Army Air Base would be used to train bomber aircraft crews and to fly anti-submarine patrols over the Atlantic coast, the Florida Straits, and the Gulf of Mexico. In 1942, Orlando Army Air Base was expanded because it was chosen to be the headquarters of the Army Air Force's School of Applied Tactics, to train pilots preparing to deploy overseas to fight. And then, only a year later, the base was used to train fighter pilots in night operations, hosting the 481st Night Fighter Group and its numerous Douglas P-70 aircraft. In 1940, the United States Army Air Corps had built Orlando a replacement civilian airport just south of the city, since it had commandeered the Orlando Municipal Airport. However, because Orlando Army Air Base had expanded so much in such a short period of time, the now renamed U.S. Army Air Forces had to use this newly built base as well, naming it Pine Castle Army Airfield. 2 bomb squadrons of the 9th Bombardment Group were formed here, and Pine Castle was equipped with B-17s, B-24s, B-25s, and B-26s to train bomber crews before deployment overseas. During World War II, tens of thousands of military personnel poured into the Orlando area for training. Many, having liked the area when they were stationed there, chose to make Orlando their home after the war. Following the Allied victory in World War II, the U.S. Army Air Forces gave control of the runway at Orlando Army Air Base back to the city of Orlando, but retained the enormous military support facilities surrounding the airfield to continue training military personnel. These facilities were later renamed to Orlando Air Force Base. Then in 1968, Orlando Air Force Base was transferred to the United States Navy and renamed Naval Training Center Orlando. Naval Training Center Orlando served as a boot camp for newly enlisted Navy personnel and also hosted the Naval Nuclear Power School, and would operate until 1999 when all facilities were sold back to the city of Orlando. And one could, and perhaps should, create a video dedicated solely to the history of Pine Castle Airfield, which later became known as McCoy Air Force Base, and today is Orlando International Airport. It witnessed some incredible history over a short period of 25 years. After the end of World War II, Pine Castle Airfield was used to test the Bell X-1 supersonic aircraft, which was the first piloted aircraft to break the speed of sound in level flight. However, it was decided to move the X-1 program in 1946, and Pine Castle was chosen to shut down as part of the downsizing of military forces following World War II. The U.S. Army Air Forces gave control of Pine Castle back to the city of Orlando, but maintained a clause in the agreement that should future military use be deemed necessary, the airbase would revert back to the U.S. military. Only a couple years later, that clause was exercised by the U.S. military as a result of the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950, and Pine Castle Air Force Base was reactivated. During the 1950s, the base would be used for training pilots on the new Boeing B-47 Stratojet, and the base became a part of Strategic Air Command. The base also added the 76th Fighter Interceptor Squadron that flew the F-89H Scorpions. Sadly, in 1957, during the annual Strategic Air Command bombing competition at Pine Castle, a B-47 Stratojet piloted by Colonel Michael McCoy, commander of the 321st Bombardment Wing, crashed just north of downtown Orlando. McCoy and 3 other airmen lost their lives. In 1958, Pine Castle was renamed McCoy Air Force Base in his honor. In 1961, McCoy Air Force Base began hosting B-52 bomber aircraft and KC-135 refueling aircraft as part of the United States nuclear deterrence efforts against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. That same year, McCoy added the EC-121 Warning Star Raider surveillance aircraft, mostly to support anti-submarine patrols alongside the U.S. Navy and to gather weather information. During the 1960s, passenger aircraft were getting larger and larger. The Orlando Municipal Airport, at this time known as Herndon Airport, with its 6,000-foot runway, was too small to accommodate these large commercial aircraft. Additionally, its air terminal was too small to accommodate the increasing number of commercial passengers flying into Central Florida. But nearby McCoy Air Force Base, with its two 12,000-foot runways, was more than capable of handling these large commercial airliners. Accordingly, beginning in 1962, an agreement was worked out between the U.S. Air Force and the City of Orlando for joint use of one of McCoy Air Force Base's runways, and the Orlando McCoy Jetport began civilian operations in 1964. In October of 1962, McCoy would find itself at the center of global attention. A Lockheed U-2 spy plane that was launched from Edwards Air Force Base, California, and that was piloted by Major Richard Heiser, took photographs of the Soviet military installing medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles on the island of Cuba. Once these photographs were captured, the U-2 landed its historic flight at McCoy Air Force Base. Because of its proximity to Cuba, McCoy Air Force Base was chosen to establish U-2 flying operations for the length of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and over 82 missions would be flown over Cuba to gather information. In support of the plan to deal with potential hostilities with Cuba, F-105Bs, F-100s, and KB-50Js were deployed to McCoy. And on the morning of October 27, 1962, a U-2 piloted by Major Rudolf Anderson departed McCoy Air Force Base and was shot down by a Soviet surface-to-air missile, killing Major Anderson. Major Anderson became the first and only U.S. casualty during the Cuban Missile Crisis and was the very first recipient of the Air Force Cross, which was awarded posthumously. Fortunately, cooler heads eventually prevailed, and the Cuban Missile Crisis came to an uneventful end in late 1962. But many of the deployed aircraft remained at McCoy for several months. McCoy also played a crucial role in the United States military efforts in the Vietnam War. Beginning in 1966, McCoy's B-52 and KC-135 units were deployed to Guam, Okinawa, and Thailand to conduct bombing and refueling missions over Southeast Asia. These units played important roles in Operations Linebacker 1 and Linebacker 2 over North Vietnam, and would eventually return home to Orlando in 1973 after the Paris Peace Accords. The U.S. military downsized once again following the end of hostilities in Vietnam. In 1975, McCoy Air Force Base was shut down and ownership was transferred over to the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority. Of course, McCoy Air Force Base eventually became Orlando International Airport, and if you ever wondered why the airport code is MCO, it's a legacy from McCoy Air Force Base. And next time you touch down at Orlando International Airport, just remember that World War III, or at least the U.S.'s response to it, nearly started from those very runways. During the 1950s, Florida's population grew by nearly 79%, becoming America's 10th most populated state. The development and widespread use of air conditioning and the establishment of the interstate highway system only fueled this growth. Florida vastly benefited from being developed so late, at least compared to other eastern U.S. states, as there were still vast stretches of cheap land still undeveloped, making it perfect for the construction of large-scale military and commercial developments during this decade and beyond. One of these developments in Central Florida was the Space Coast. The Space Coast traces its roots back to 1949, when Cape Canaveral was chosen as a test site for the United States' nascent rocket program. Cape Canaveral was chosen as a prime place to test rockets because it was mostly undeveloped at this time. It was relatively close to the equator compared to other sites in the U.S., which allowed rockets to get an extra boost from the Earth's rotation, and because the rockets could fall harmlessly into the Atlantic Ocean should something go wrong. Following the Soviet Union's successful Sputnik 1 mission in 1957, the U.S. government decided to speed up space exploration and poured immense amounts of resources into the U.S. space program. NASA was founded in 1958, and the Kennedy Space Center would open on July 1, 1962. And to assist the U.S. efforts in the space race, the University of Central Florida, known at the time as the Florida Technological University, opened in 1968 just east of downtown Orlando, with the mission of educating students in science, engineering, technology, and math. Cape Canaveral has been the launch site of every American orbital and lunar human spaceflight since 1968. Other military bases in the region include a Coast Guard base, Cape Canaveral Air Force Base, and Patrick Air Force Base. In 2020, these were renamed Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and Patrick Space Force Base. Today, the rocket industry employs tens of thousands of people. Also in the 1950s, the Orlando area welcomed the Glenn L. Martin Company, later Martin Marietta, and today known as Lockheed Martin, which purchased over 12 square miles of land southwest of the city for a plant to build missiles. Martin had manufactured over 1,000 B-26 bombers and over 500 B-29 bombers for the U.S. during World War II. In 1956, the Martin Company decided to get into the booming Central Florida aerospace industry. The Martin missile plant employed over 2,700 people, and production began on missile projects such as Pershing, Bullpup, Lacrosse, Spring, Patriot, and Hellfire. Lockheed Martin still maintains a large presence in the Orlando area today, with its missiles and fire control and rotary and mission systems divisions. Even more U.S. military installations were added to Central Florida in the mid-1960s, when the Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division, try saying that 10 times fast, moved from Long Island, New York to Orlando. The NAWCTSD is the principal research, development, and testing entity for the United States Navy as it relates to training systems. The NAWCTSD's location near the University of Central Florida led to the development of the Central Florida Research Park, and to Orlando being the center for the development and testing of military simulation technologies that it is today. By 1950, the population of Orange County exceeded 100,000 people. By 1960, the population reached over 263,000 people. Interstate 4 was completed in 1965, and Orlando had become the undisputed financial and transportation hub of Central Florida. However, things were about to get a lot more exciting in the late 1960s and early 1970s with the arrival of a cartoon animator from California. In the summer of 1955, the world was treated to the opening of Disneyland in Anaheim, California, and the park was an enormous success. However, by 1959, Walt Disney was looking for a new, larger piece of land to build a second amusement park, because Disneyland was limited from expanding by all the businesses that had sprung up around it. Marketing surveys informed Disney that less than 5% of Disneyland's visitors came from east of the Mississippi River, where over 75% of the U.S. population lived at the time. Furthermore, Disney wanted much more land to grow and experiment with. So after touring numerous locations around the United States, Disney decided that Florida could be a potential site for his new theme park, due to its agreeable climate and the tourism industry already growing there. After touring places like Miami, Ocala, and Tampa, Disney settled on Orlando for several reasons. First, Orlando was not located directly on the coast. and thus was not as susceptible to hurricanes. Second, Orlando had an abundance of cheap land near the city. And third, the future completion of Interstate 4 and Florida's Turnpike meant easy access to and from the park for visitors, and the targeted land was near Orlando's International Airport. To avoid a flurry in land speculation, Walt Disney Productions used various fictitious companies to buy up parcels of land southwest of Orlando, eventually purchasing 27,443 acres, which is roughly 43 square miles of land, or twice the size of Manhattan Island. However, these purchases were far too large and mysterious to go unnoticed. Orlandoans and Orlando newspapers became very curious about who or what was behind these large land purchases. Was it Howard Hughes? NASA? The Rockefellers? Rumors eventually leaked that Walt Disney was building an East Coast version of Disneyland. On November 15, 1965, Walt confirmed the rumors with an official announcement, alongside Florida Governor Hayden Burns, that he planned to build the greatest attraction in the history of Florida. Shortly after the announcement, as was predicted, land speculation did indeed go out of control, as hoteliers and restaurateurs grabbed up property surrounding the proposed park. Swampland was being sold for millions. Sadly, Walt Disney would never see his dream vision completed. He passed away on December 15, 1966, before the park ever opened. In Walt's absence, his brother Roy Disney took over the reins of overseeing construction of the park, and a groundbreaking ceremony was held on May 30, 1967, to begin construction. This construction effort employed over 9,000 people. Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom officially opened to visitors on October 1, 1971. Celebrities such as Bob Hope and Julie Andrews took part in the opening ceremonies. The price of admission was $3.50 for adults and just $1 for children under 12. Of course, the park was an enormous success. In its first 2 years, the park drew over 20 million visitors and employed over 13,000 people. Since the Magic Kingdom's initial opening, Walt Disney World has gone on to open 3 additional parks: Epcot in 1982, MGM Studios, now Hollywood Studios, in 1989, and Animal Kingdom in 1998. Disney World also opened 2 enormous water parks, Typhoon Lagoon in 1989 and Blizzard Beach in 1995. Today, Magic Kingdom is the most visited theme park in the entire world. Just for the year 2023, Magic Kingdom received over 17 million visitors, and Walt Disney World, in its entirety, welcomed well over 50 million visitors. By 1970, the city of Orlando's population had reached nearly 100,000 people, and Orange County's population had reached 344,000 people. Following the success of the recently opened Disney World theme park, SeaWorld decided to open its 3rd park in the United States in the Orlando area in 1973, the first 2 parks being opened in San Diego, California, and Cleveland, Ohio. SeaWorld was founded in 1964 by 4 friends and graduates of the University of California, Los Angeles, after failed attempts to get investments for an underwater restaurant and marine life show. The 4 graduates decided to open a marine theme park instead. SeaWorld Orlando offers marine animal education, marine animal exhibits and shows, and numerous roller coasters. Today, SeaWorld Orlando is the 10th most visited theme park in North America, with nearly 4.5 million visitors in 2023. During the 1970s, most of Orlando's growth happened outside of the downtown area. For the most part, the downtown was relatively small and neglected, while the areas outside of downtown were booming from unprecedented growth due to the construction of theme parks, hotels, and new residential areas. The recent completion of the East-West Expressway further expedited the move of residents from the downtown area out to the suburbs. During this period of downtown neglect, even Lake Eola fell into disrepair and became a haven for drug addicts and prostitution. However, in the 1980s, a concerted effort was put forth by Orlando residents to begin revitalizing the downtown area. Many of the city's skyscrapers were built during the 1980s, including the Bank of America Center and the city's tallest building, the SunTrust Center. and the city's first professional sports team, the Orlando Magic, began play in 1989 at the Orlando Arena, and Lake Eola Park was redesigned and expanded in the 1990s. In 1991, Orlando's third City Hall building was opened right behind the city's previous City Hall building. The previous City Hall was completed in 1958 and was falling into disrepair. The Orlando City Council chose to implode the 1950s building, and the implosion was met with much local fanfare, as it was filmed for use in the opening scene of the movie Lethal Weapon 3 with Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. Things would change even more in 1997 as another building boom in the downtown area began, and really continues on to this day. The Orange County Courthouse was completed in 1997, and the CNL Center City Commons was opened in 1999. This was followed in 2006 with the completion of the Solaire and the Premier Trade Plaza. The View at Lake Eola opened in 2008, and 55 West and the 111 building both opened in 2009. Commercial buildings were being built along Orange Avenue, and large residential towers were constructed around Lake Eola. But the 1990s also saw another huge addition to the Central Florida theme park landscape, Universal Orlando Resort. In 1964, Universal Studios Hollywood began offering tours of its studio in Los Angeles to increase profits. The tours featured dressing room walkthroughs, peeks at actual film production, and stage entertainment shows. Over the years, a narrated tram tour was added, and this was followed by the transition into a full-blown theme park with rides and attractions. By the early 1980s, Universal mulled over the idea of opening an amusement park in Florida to compete with Disney World, and desired to open a park offering studio tours and movie-themed thrill rides like its Los Angeles studio. Disney executives heard of these rumors coming from Universal, and as a preemptive strike, opened MGM Studios, now Hollywood Studios, in 1989, which led to a feud between the two companies. Despite this, Universal Studios Florida pressed on and opened on June 7, 1990. The new park kept its tram tours of the film studios as a theme, but also created several rides and attractions based upon popular films. Universal Orlando was meant to also be an East Coast full production studio, and for a brief period of time, Universal filmed movies and television shows at the park. Over time, the park shifted from the fourth wall convention, where cast and crew directly communicated to guests, to immersing the guests in the middle of the action itself, so that the guest feels like a key character in the show's storyline. Today, Universal Studios Florida has 8 themed areas all surrounding a large lagoon that showcases everything from the wizarding world of Harry Potter to Hollywood and DreamWorks themed attractions. And any person who grew up in the 1990s probably has fond memories of watching all of the television programs on Nickelodeon as a child. In 1990, Nickelodeon Studios Florida opened along with Universal Orlando, and production on television shows began immediately. Sitcoms and sketch comedies such as Clarissa Explains It All, Kenan and Kel, All That, and The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, along with game shows such as Double Dare, What Would You Do, Guts, and Legends of the Hidden Temple, kept kids glued to their TVs for over a decade. And everyone probably remembers the images of goopy, green slime falling on contestants' heads during game shows. All of these shows were filmed in Orlando until the early 2000s, when nearly all Nickelodeon studio production was eventually moved to Southern California. Ultimately, Universal Orlando would go on to open Universal Islands of Adventure in 1999, Universal Volcano Bay Water Park in 2017, and Universal Epic Universe in 2025. And today, Universal Islands of Adventure is the 3rd most visited park in North America, and Universal Studios Florida is the 5th most visited park in North America, each with over 10 million visitors annually. And an unexpected consequence of Orlando having such a large concentration of enormous theme parks also led to another phenomena in American culture: the formation and explosion in popularity of boy bands in the 1990s. But why Orlando, and what do theme parks have to do with boy bands? Well, the late and now disgraced American music manager, Lou Pearlman, moved to the Orlando area in 1991. Perlman had made some money earlier in his career, before he moved to Orlando, in the aviation industry, and became fascinated by the recent success of New Kids on the Block, whom he had chartered an airplane to. Seeing the potential to make millions, Perlman set out to make the next hit boy band. The pool of talent of young entertainers in Orlando is very deep, due to the fact that Disney World and Universal Studios Florida auditioned thousands of aspiring young dancers, singers, and actors for shows such as the Mickey Mouse Club. Perlman ran ads for auditions in the Blue Sheet, a local Orlando newsletter that listed auditions and opportunities for young performers. Perlman created the music label Transcontinental Records, and from the auditions, crafted some of the most successful musical groups in history, including the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, LFO, Take 5, and O-Town, which was named after Orlando itself. Eventually, Perlman would be sued by these boy bands for embezzlement, and was later convicted in an enormous Ponzi scheme for defrauding investors. Perlman was sentenced to 25 years in prison, where he passed away in 2016 while serving out his sentence. And during the 2000s, downtown Orlando continued its building boom, constructing high-rise towers along Orange Avenue and along the southern and western shoreline of Lake Eola. Downtown's population density has doubled since 1970. Hurricane Charlie struck Orlando in 2004, with winds exceeding over 105 miles per hour. More than 60% of Orlando's residents lost power, but the rebuilding in the storm's aftermath was quick, and it did little to slow down Orlando's momentum. And lastly, the new Amway Center, now Kia Center, opened in 2010 on the west side of I-4, giving the Orlando Magic a new venue to play in. And Orlando's second professional sports team, Orlando City SC, was formed the same year and began play in 2011. The Lions' new soccer-specific venue, Inter & Co Stadium, opened in 2017 near the Kia Center. So what does Orlando's future hold? Well, recent data shows that Orlando is continuing to grow rapidly. The city of Orlando experienced a population growth of over 29% from 2010 to 2020, and the greater Orlando area experienced a population growth of 25.3% during the same time period, an increase of over 500,000 people. Universal Orlando just recently opened its fourth theme park earlier this year with Universal Epic Universe at a cost of roughly $7 billion, effectively doubling the size of its park footprint and creating over 17,000 new jobs. And Walt Disney World is discussing building a fifth major theme park, along with 3 smaller parks, 2 water parks, 13,000 additional hotel rooms, and 20% more retail space over the next 2 decades. And billions of dollars are being pumped into greater Orlando infrastructure projects, such as expanding Interstate 4, extending Sunrail to directly connect Orlando International Airport to Disney World, and building a new 14-mile expressway called the Central Florida Expressway. Thousands of houses and new neighborhoods are currently under construction, including the 20,000-acre Sunbridge development and The Grove, which is an agri-hood concept where the neighborhood includes a 20-acre community park, a 9-acre working farm, a community barn, community gardens, and an elementary school. The Westcourt mixed-use project in downtown Orlando near the Kia Center is currently in development to enhance Orlando's downtown core with a new hotel, office space, apartments, and a live entertainment venue. Camping World Stadium is also undergoing a $400 million renovation. And Orlando residents and stakeholders are campaigning fiercely to bring Major League Baseball to the Orlando area with the Orlando Dreamers expansion team. News reports indicate that Orlando has already secured $1.5 billion in funding to finance the team and build a new 45,000-seat stadium. With all of this investment and growth, Orlando is one of the fastest-growing markets in the United States. Central Florida is projected to have a population of over 6 million residents by 2030. With its abundance of theme parks, agreeable weather, proximity to the Space Coast, and investments in infrastructure, it's easy to see why so many people choose to make Central Florida their home or their first choice as a travel destination. It will be awesome to see what new and exciting developments and attractions Central Florida will add to its landscape, and watch how Orlando evolves and advances in the near future. Thanks so much for stopping by to learn a little bit about the complex and captivating history of Orlando, a great American city. We hope you enjoyed your time. Goodbye for now, and look forward to seeing you next time. And for those who would like to hang out just a few minutes longer, please stay tuned for a short segment on the Give Kids the World Village. Okay, as promised, I wanted to take a little time to inform you about an amazing organization in the Orlando area that I stumbled upon when researching this video: the Give Kids the World Village. The Give Kids the World Village is a nonprofit resort that provides critically ill children and their families with week-long vacations at no cost. Half of critically ill children eligible for a wish choose a theme park in Central Florida to visit. Give Kids the World Village provides these critically ill children and their families with all-inclusive vacations, including transportation, lodging, food, and theme park tickets. The organization was founded by Henry Landworth, a Holocaust survivor who spent 5 years in Auschwitz and Mauthausen concentration camps during the Second World War. Henry eventually immigrated to the United States and served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War. After surviving the Holocaust and 2 wars, Henry wanted to give back to the world and dedicated himself to serving and helping others, particularly to provide any assistance he could to those who are suffering. Following his service in the war, Henry moved to Florida in the 1950s and began working in the hotel industry. In the 1980s, Henry began offering complimentary hotel rooms at his hotel for terminally ill children from the Make-A-Wish Foundation who wished to visit an Orlando theme park. One such child, Amy, who suffered from leukemia, had a wish to visit some of Orlando's theme parks and was in the process of arranging things for her visit, but complications arose. Amy was provided a free place to stay, but lining up everything else, such as the theme park tickets and transportation, took too long to arrange, and Amy passed away from her illness before she could fulfill her wish. Amy's unfulfilled wish deeply affected Henry, and inspired him to vow that no child's wish would ever go unfulfilled again due to something that could easily be overcome, such as logistics issues. As a result, Henry founded the Give Kids the World Village in 1986 to ensure no child's dying wish would ever go unfulfilled again. The village, located just southeast of Walt Disney World, now serves any child between the ages of 3 and 18 who has been diagnosed with a critical illness. Give Kids the World Village has accommodated over 177,000 families from all 50 U.S. states and 76 different countries, and has been given a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator for 15 years in a row, a rating in the top 1% of U.S. charities. This channel is in no way affiliated with Give Kids the World Village, nor has the channel been asked to highlight the village. I just happened to stumble across the organization by accident and was moved by its purpose. And I wanted to inform those viewers who may have children with a critical illness, or those who may want to donate time or resources to this organization and support its noble mission: to grant a wish to a child that has been given a very difficult start in life, to provide support and community for families navigating through unimaginably challenging times, and to provide these remarkably brave and resilient children with love, encouragement, and dignity. To learn more about Give Kids the World Village, including how to apply, how to help, any ongoing or planned events, or how to volunteer, please visit www.gktw.org. I'm also happy to provide a direct link in this video's description section. Thanks again for stopping by, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.